Welcome to another episode of Show and Tell Books. I'm Chantel,
And I'm Amber.
and today we're going to be talking about Red Rising by Pierce Brown.
I'm actually really excited to talk about this book because I'm still processing it, and it's a book that my husband recommended to us. So
It's been on my list for probably like a year, and then when your husband recommended it, I was like, all right, clearly I have to like move it up the list. And it was random because you texted me and you were like, hey, I'm starting Red Rising. We should do this for a YouTube video. And I was like, I literally just got it too. So the fact that we both got it at the same time made me laugh because even, on opposite sides of the country, our reading styles are still in sync. So, for those who don't know, Red Rising is a sci fi fantasy novel that was published in 2014. Like I said, it's by Pierce Brown, and it focuses on the main character, Darrow. He is a red, and he lives in a caste system on Mars that divides people up by like a color coded caste, similar kind of to like what Red Queen does, except they have a lot more colors. So he's at the very, very bottom of the tier, and they're in this kind of dystopian society. Basically, they've been told their entire lives and for generations that the Reds are there to mine Mars to make it inhabitable and livable for other people to come. His wife starts talking to him and being like, hey, maybe there's more to this. Like, why are we just taking what they're saying at face value and stuff? She ends up dying because of that belief, and it kind of forces Darrow to start confronting everything he's thought he'd known about the society, and make some decisions from then on. So then he learns that his wife was right, and that they are being treated like slaves, and that there's so much more to their entire society than he thought. And so he has an opportunity to infiltrate the caste system at the highest level to try and become a spy for the rebellion and to change how the caste system works. And so the vast majority of the book is about that experience and him infiltrating the upper caste and getting into a good position.
let's talk about like what it reminds us of to kind of give more context, right? So what books does Red Rising remind you of?
So the way I explain it to people, and I think this hopefully helped, is it's the caste system of Red Queen, and like that concept still of like, depending on what color you are, you have more powers and things like that, mixed with Hunger Games and like the brutality and ruthlessness of like the games in the book context, and yes, in the movies as well. If it was in a new adult kind of category or even adult kind of category, mixed with kind of the concept and setting of Ender's Game.
For me, because I haven't read Red Queen or Ender's Game, I equated this to Percy Jackson, Hunger Games, Divergent. It's got that, dystopian dissatisfaction amongst the different groups of Divergent. And then part of the school is related to the gods. And so to me, there was that element of seeing these human traits associated with gods, Greek gods of Percy Jackson, plus the relationship between Percy and Annabeth. You kind of get some of that in the mix with Darrow and his classmates. What I didn't realize, though, was this book is supposed to be a YA. So do you consider it to be a young adult book?
No, no. I knew it was a YA. That's kind of how it had been explained to me. And so I went into it, and then right from the get-go, some of like the vocabulary and the language, and especially the themes and the morality that's used throughout the book, I was just like, how is this a YA book? It is very mature in content. So I would put it at probably a new adult to adult book, not a YA book at all.
So I thought this was interesting because Darrow in the book is introduced as a 16-year-old, but as you hear his outlook on the world, he feels like he's very mature because of the role the Reds play and how they're treated, and like they don't make it a long time. Like their lifespan is, you're considered an old man at 32 kind of thing, right? So I thought it was interesting that all of the main characters that you get to know in this are relatively young, and they're considered to be children. but the writing didn't feel like children to me at all. I actually asked my husband today, I was like, hey, would you categorize Red Rising as a young adult? And he didn't even think about it. He's like, yeah, totally.
Really interesting. I get like because they're 16-year-olds, sure. And I really actually liked that Darrow, there's a point in the book when he like looks at the other colors and what they're doing, how they're reacting to certain situations, and he feels old because he realizes that his age compared to what others are doing at that same age makes him old. So I think that lended itself to kind of the entire novel having a more mature context and thought process and things like that. But I'm surprised that it is categorized as a young adult.
Yeah, I would recommend this as like if you're an adult who grew up reading Divergent, Percy Jackson, Red Queen, Ender's Game, like you would probably enjoy this book, but I would not necessarily recommend it to like that 13 to 15 range that I associate with a young adult or even a little bit older because it has triggers. Like it covers torture, rape, there are sexual scenes, like, and it's explicit in content of the brutality that these children face in their schooling.
I thought it was actually honestly kind of refreshing to see essentially like an intro to the horrors of war, I guess, in a way. And I feel like not a lot of novels actually portray that. Like Hunger Games started hinting at a lot of like the ugliness of the brutality of what they were trying to portray, but it didn't actually capture it because again, that is more YA friendly. Whereas this one, I don't know if it was because Darrow is older in maturity or if it was a combination of what they were trying to like portray that the society does. But I really liked how well they balanced it. But again, I mean, you can read it as a young adult. I just think you need to know going into it that it is actually going to be a lot more heavy in subject matter than a lot of similar books that we explained.
So, what was your favorite scene?
Okay. One of my favorite scenes is Darrow. His leadership is challenged in the book, and he's presented with a conundrum where he has to reprimand a fellow soldier for doing something, but also trying to make it so that his group doesn't faction and split. And it's interesting because it's juxtaposed with a mistake he made earlier in the book when in a very similar situation, he handled that one wrong. So what he does is he reprimands and whips the soldier, but then in order to kind of bring the entire group together and reinforce his leadership, he also has the other guy whip him to basically explain like whatever you do hurts all of us. And so I will take that because that is a shame on me as a leader. And that was just so cleverly written and like amazing leadership skills that were taught. And I loved that scene for everything that it portrayed.
So, I'm not going to give away spoilers, or I'm going to try not to give away spoilers, but my favorite scene was actually at the end when he's having a conversation with the arch governor and they're talking about the importance of the lessons taught in the schooling that they went through. And the arch governor is like, it doesn't matter. Once you leave this place, it's the rest of your life. What you gain from this isn't going with you. The relationships you formed aren't going with you. And Darrow's in his head like, oh, I'm going to prove you wrong. Like, you don't understand human behavior as much as you think you do, is kind of the feelings he has. And I just really enjoyed that the author tried to explore very deeply why people do the things that they do. I feel like that's what this book was trying to get at, of why has this society developed the way it has? And then the way that their school was designed was kind of trying to have them go through that evolution in a short amount of time and see where it takes them. And Darrow, as a mature Red, challenged that. And I felt like the author did a really good job of presenting these different models of thinking.
I have another book to add actually to our whole like how we'd compare it. I'd say 1984, one of like the classic dystopian kind of concept novels, fits very well with the style of this because you're right. Like the entire novel is all about like exploring different forms of leadership and caste systems and what it truly means to like be a human and the relationships and connections that we form. And it was spectacularly done. I agree with you. Like I'm still trying to wrap my head around all of the symbolism in the book and the beautiful writing style and the way Pierce Brown explained a lot of really complex topics through such a really cool story.
And I felt like it was done in an accessible way. Like there's the surface level, like, oh, I understand the point he's trying to get across with this discussion. It's very, very easy to understand. But then as you think about it, there's another level underneath and another level underneath. It's part of a saga. So there are a number of books in this series. Are you going to keep reading?
Yes. I'm actually don't know how many books there are. Hold on.
I think there's 6 now.
They're slated for a 7th coming
Yeah.
out next year. Clearly, we've got some reading to do because, yeah, I want to finish the series. It was really good and really clever, and I'm excited to see where he goes with it because while book 1 left off with like a satisfying conclusion, and technically I feel like it could be the end, it also left off with okay, this is just chapter 1. What else is next? Especially because there's the rest of the uprising and like the potential romance that he has. And like, I definitely will be reading the rest of the series.
Yeah. Okay, here's my last question. Should it be made into a movie?
I don't know.
I'm going to go with no.
I think so too. I think like Hunger Games and the Hunger Games movies, it could be magic just like those were, and they complemented each other and built it into the fandom and like cult following that it is, right? But there's something so classic feeling about Red Rising that I actually don't want a movie to be made out of it because I think you understand and take what you want out of it more so when you read it or when you listen to it than if you were to watch it. I feel like if you were to watch it, it would actually trivialize the message that's trying to be portrayed in the novel.
I agree with that. Also, I think the descriptions of his setting aren't transferable to screen. I feel like you'd run into kind of what you saw in Divergent, where it's so CGI'd or so fake that you don't connect with it the way that you connect with it seeing it on the page.
Overall, like I would 100% actually recommend this book. I can see why everyone I talked to when I mentioned like I like sci-fi or fantasy kind of novels, they're like, read this book. I will say I think it's actually very interesting that the like 3 or 4 people who did recommend this book to me are all guys. And I wonder if that factors into one, kind of your husband's thought of it is a YA novel. And for us, we were like, I don't know if it is. But also, 2, I feel like it's a well-known book, but not a popular book, if that makes sense. So I would highly recommend it.
I highly recommend it as well. It's one of those books that I think if there were more guys on Book Talk, we probably would see it on social media more. You know what I mean? Like, yes. Since Book Talk and Bookstagram are predominantly female. Women, female, I think that's why we're not seeing it on social media as much.
I think it's actually going to be a book I go out and find and buy.
That's a big deal.
Because I liked it that much. And I do want to put in the caveat, if you're looking for a book where you can just like read or listen to and not really super pay attention to or things like that, this is not the book for it. Like the fact that I think we both finished it about a week ago and we're still both thinking it over and trying to understand like all the nuances and like layers that it had to it shows how deep this book is. And really, it's not like a quick read.
Yeah, it definitely took time for me to read this book. It wasn't in a day that I listened to it. I had to take a week or a little bit more to kind of piece by piece go through it. I will say I saw someone talk about like an Illumicrate special edition of it. And so it is popular enough that it's been in some book boxes and we're maybe just behind. But
Could be.
there is the sixth book comes out this year and it's slated to have a seventh book next year. So it's definitely a saga that's continuing, and I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes.
Like, let us know. Have you read this book? If you haven't, is it on your TBR? What are your thoughts? Like, let us know, because that is the whole point of us kind of doing these videos, is to kind of create a community of people who read and who enjoy it. That takes care of today's video. If you guys have any book recommendations for similar kind of sci-fi fantasy books, drop a comment and let us know. And we will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. Bye.